Hello, welcome back to After This. I'm Daniel,
My name is Carla.
And my name is Shannon.
and today we are covering. Today we are covering the topic of how can we put this together. So what I'm thinking of in terms of this question is how do you amalgamate everything? How do you go from the world that we're in right now, which is all the separate countries and everything else, and the way we think and the way things are structured, how do we go from there to being a single entity? Now, this is sort of two different questions, and I'll get into that in a second. But the first thing, I wanted to reiterate this point from the last episode because it's really worth bearing. Because even though it's not really the outcome a lot of people wanted, the role of Donald Trump's election is just really illustrative. Like, it says so much. Like, and the same with Brexit. It's these votes that essentially no one thought were going to go that way. And then suddenly a whole bunch of people came out who thought something that no one thought was the consensus and voted for something, and now all of a sudden it's happening. You know what I mean? They're occurring because enough people came out and voted for them. And while you may or may not like them, and I certainly don't like either of them, you can't deny the fact that there's this power in like having this big group of people who believe something. You can make all kinds of insane new things occur. Like, it's really not as impossible as it sounds, because obviously, like we said last time, those bets on the Donald Trump presidency were like 300 to 1 or something. I do remember seeing them. I just don't remember where I saw them. The odds were written out, and it was like, who wants to take a vote on this kind of thing? And it's just, nah. But, yeah, it's worth bearing that in mind, just how fluid things actually are when we get so used to things being a certain way.
Yeah.
And things making sense. But, like, just, things can just change suddenly based on enough people voting for it. And, yeah, we've seen that happen.
So, do you think, therefore, it would have to be a vote in order for us to become a unified entity?
Yes. I mean, that's actually the thing, and it's in a book I'm listening to at the moment called The Last Man by Francis Fukuyama. He's talking about the importance of consensus and legitimacy. That's the word. The importance of legitimacy. And that even in the most dictatorial governments, even in whatever it is, you have a sense of legitimacy. Otherwise, they wouldn't last for more than a few years. People at least think, yes, he's a terrible tyrant or something, but we need a strong man because of X and Y. In fact, you can see that's what's happening in America. Like,
Yep.
it's like a quasi-dictator, but there is a sense of legitimacy amongst his base, at least. And so the thing is, like, you need to have legitimacy. So you need a vote. And the thing is, if it came to a war or something, I think the thing is, you'd have so many people dying and all these terrible things happening. Those scars don't heal, really. Like, people remember that you took over a country and shot everyone or something that tried to resist or whatever it was. Like, war is not the way that this can happen. It has to happen democratically, and that way people will actually stick to it. Anyway, so the 2 points of this was basically the functional side and the ideological side, because there's two different questions you're really asking with how to put it together. So, one, you're talking about it functionally. So functionally, how do you amalgamate all these countries? So say everyone agrees, everything's great. How do we now go and bring everything into one big blob?
Hope it makes that sound.
I really do. It's like, is that Unification Day? It's like 3, 2, 1, beep. And with that sound, we went forward into the future. You read my mind.
One small.
That's exactly where I want this to go. That's exactly how I imagine this in all of my dreams. Yeah. So after the fart sound, we become unified. But like, how do you? So yeah, it's how do you do it? Like, how do you structure things and piece things together to make it all come together smoothly into a single system? And the second question is ideologically. So, yeah, of course, the functional thing's one thing, but that's assuming everyone already wants it. How do you make people want to do it, essentially? Like, how do you spread the idea so that people want to do it? And then how do you get those countries to change? Because obviously at the moment what you have, if you look at it practically, you have 192 countries, and each of them has its own little government with its own way of viewing the world that probably won't agree to something like this at the moment because they're national governments. All the people there are, part of the national political machine, and a lot of them have come up with national ideas, and it doesn't really fit with this. So it's the question of how do you get that, that existing state of play essentially to change in ideological terms. So if we talk functionally first, because obviously that's maybe simpler to look at, functionally the best thing I can think of is the EU.
Yeah.
Right? Because obviously the EU is a series of countries that are adding more countries all the time. Well, not all the time, but like in waves they do based on criteria. And like that's sort of exactly what I had in mind.
Yeah.
So the thing is, like, I actually found all the criteria that they have. There's the political ones, the economic ones, and the legislative ones. So you have to be a democracy.
Yep.
You have to have the rule of law. You have to protect minorities. You have to have, human rights respect, all those sorts of things. So you can't be an authoritarian regime that, rounds up a certain minority and does whatever. Like, you just can't. They won't let you in if that's the case.
Yeah.
And those political things, I think, is a lot of the reason why Turkey had a lot of problems getting in. Because they were a bit too far over to the right. I mean, you could also say that they're also, like, we don't want to bring Turkey in because that's Middle Eastern, and that's probably as part of the way that they're thinking. But that's ostensibly the reasons that they say it's the political reasons.
Yeah, and I know there was a couple. I looked it up. I don't think I made a note of it, but I know there are a couple of countries that have been in that application stage for years and years, trying to get to those.
Well, I think Turkey
criteria.
is one of the ones that was
right.
applying for like a very long time. The Ukraine was trying to for ages. Did you ever see Winter on Fire?
No.
The Netflix documentary? It's all about because the country was sort of going towards, definitely recommend watching it, but it was all about the country going towards the EU because all the young people and Western Ukrainians wanted to go to the EU because they're like, we're European, we're not Russian, we're European, we want to go that way. But
Russia has some other ideas.
Yeah. The president of the country. This is before everything happened, obviously. So all this stuff happened. So the president of the country, I can't remember the name of it. It starts with a P. I can't remember his name. He basically was saying, no, absolutely. But then right when they're about to go sign it, he said, no, look, I'm going to put this on hold for a second because we're going to go talk to Russia for a bit, see what we want to do and sort of stuff like this. Like, because we might want to go do something with them. And everyone was really angry about it. So that led to the big protests in the square, and then all the kids came out, and it's like Occupy kind of thing, but like actually lots of violence.
Right.
So then they sort of they tried to use the police to put it down because he wanted to go east, and then it ended up blowing up, and then he fled to Russia basically, and they took over Kiev, the protesters, and then it ended up going. They had to replace the entire government, and then obviously Russia didn't have their favorite president in Ukraine anymore, so they invaded Ukraine. So they invaded the Crimea without invading the Crimea. Has like whatever it is, air quotes, yeah. And at the same time, they invaded eastern Ukraine. Well, sorry, invaded eastern Ukraine.
Air quotes again.
Yeah. So I think that's one.
Yeah.
I think it's basically there's a big struggle at the moment in the eastern parts where Russia doesn't want to let go of its influence and they're trying to go to the EU and stuff.
Yeah, I found that list. So Turkey has applied for membership in the Union in 1987, and it's pretty much at a standstill.
Yeah.
And then the other the other four candidates are North Macedonia, Montenegro, Albania, and Serbia.
I would have a feeling that those would be based on the political stuff because of their histories.
Yeah.
I know the economic requirements are basically you can't have massive budget deficits, you can't have like out of control inflation, you can't have too much debt, that sort of stuff. Like you have to be economically healthy.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't have let them in probably because of concerns over the political stuff. That would be my guess. I don't actually know that. And then legislative. So they basically just need to update all their laws to match the EU laws,
Mm-hmm.
so they're not out of whack. So I mean
Well-
that is exactly the kind of thing you probably have.
How much control does the EU have over the laws of any individual country?
An
Is
individual
it just that they're
country.
going to meet those requirements
It's
to get
basically
in rather than being designated?
so. I think the thing is you have to match a certain set of laws to get in. I'm not really sure what the laws are. I think it's to do with obviously there's all the protections that are there, but it's to do with it would be commercial laws and things like that. Like you can't do anything that contravenes our clean air rules and whatever it is. Like there'd be rules like that. I'm not sure what they are though. But the thing is, once you're in, you have to still comply with them because you've applied to join on the basis that you want to be part of this whole.
Right, okay.
So once you're in, like you've said, you want to be a part of this thing, so you have to be a part of the thing.
Yeah.
And obviously, then you get Brexit if you suddenly change your mind.
Yeah.
So I think they do have a lot of control over certain things. Like if you're basically a member and you say, I want to vote for this law, but it directly contravenes something in the EU, like I don't think you'd be able to do it.
Yeah.
Because you've agreed to be part of this grouping sort of thing. But that's the problem, that they don't just have an EU like Congress or something, like an EU Parliament, where like people, well, they do have one, but all the control is actually with this commission.
Yeah, I was looking at some like diagrammatic mind maps of how the EU is structured, and it's just ridiculously complicated.
Oh, it is. Yeah. No, that's the thing. Like I told you last time, it's a half country.
Yeah.
It's basically you got all these countries, and they're amalgamating. So basically turning into this one big country, and then like halfway, they just said, now we're nervous, and then like so now it's kind of like you've got these countries that are all also in a thing that's kind of like a country, and
some of it is direct voting by everyone, all the people in the EU, and others are voting by the leaders of each of those individual countries.
My understanding is that you vote for European parliamentarians, but the main control and decision making happens with the Commission. And the Commission, the people that are picked for the Commission are picked by the civil governments of each place. So they all, every time the Commission comes together to talk about a topic, so say they're talking about the environment, or they're talking about garbage, or they're talking about something, it's like they get everyone to send them someone. So it's not even a set person.
Right.
So basically that government then says, we're going to send this person to be our representative for that thing, but the party the party in that country chooses that person.
Okay.
So it's kind of like you've picked the party and then the party picks the person kind of thing.
Yeah.
But
Which
it's not the direct line that I think a lot of people want.
Yeah.
It's and then that commission will meet on that topic, and they'll have the representatives from all the countries talking about it, and then they'll go back, and then they'll meet on a different topic, and everyone will turn up.
Yeah.
Then there's like a council that kind of like organizes that, but they don't actually have the legislative power at all. It's complicated. It's very complicated. It's way more complicated than it needs to be.
Yeah, it's clearly very complicated, but none of it sounds objectionable in any way.
Yeah, like the thing is, the EU is like, I don't want what the EU is now. Like, I think it needs to just finish and become a full country and become a federation, basically, so that you have the same kind of federal and state decision making that you have in other federations.
Right.
It's basic. It's like it's 90% of a federation, but it's not quite there. Where they're all like economically tied up, but then the political decision making is so split up that you can have like what Greece did, where Greece came on and said, yes, our economy is extremely healthy, and then they let them in, and then suddenly it's like, by that I mean debt. and then they had the euro. So the thing is, suddenly you had one country with its economy falling to pieces that had a euro currency, and all the other countries that had euro currency that had perfectly functional economies getting really nervous because they can't influence Greece. Like, the thing is, there's no federal entity that can make Greece do certain economic policies.
Right.
Basically, they all have to sit there and just watch nervously while, like, things go wrong and get worse and worse.
But would that have protected Greece significantly? Like, I feel like if they weren't on the euro, surely their economic situation would have just snowballed and got even worse. With
Oh,
the rest of the
absolutely. Oh, for
countries.
Greece, it was the best
Yeah.
thing. For everyone else, it really hurt.
It hurt,
That's
but
what
it didn't.
it was.
They didn't collapse. Like it was.
No,
They definitely would have suffered for it.
No.
But I think it's a decent example of how having that
You can stabilize
you
each
can
other.
stabilize it. Yeah, you stabilize each other. So
Yeah.
it makes it a bit more difficult. But next time
Yeah.
it might be some other country that.
Oh yeah, but that's
that
what I
gets
mean.
us
Like if it had just and then yes, I would say it's a net win. Honestly,
Yeah.
the thing is, but I think in terms of this, it's like you just want to finish it, so then basically you can have that financial influence.
Yeah.
You can have that political influence as well. You don't just have to cop each other's losses and even things out. You actually are able to step in and say, we need to do this and this fiscal policy, whatever it is. The federal government can come in and intervene on a state if it's going insane,
Bonkers,
kind
yeah.
of thing. Like, they didn't have that control. They had to basically just recommend things to Greece and lend them money on certain terms and things like that. And it's like they had room, but it's nowhere near the amount of control you need to really properly organize things like that.
Yeah, I can see how that's...
So it's like, yes, but we're trying to get to something complete rather than this
Yeah.
half thing that the EU is. So essentially the idea of all of that is through all the political and economic and everything else, you can control the intake of countries. So the thing is, if you did it on a global scale, obviously you could quickly pick up all the wealthy countries
Yeah.
because they'd all be organized, but you'd probably have some kind of system in place for encouraging people to get to certain tiers or something. Maybe the thing is you could even have like people on a program or something that you've got so you can help people get that last little bit and then get them in or something like that.
Yeah, some kind of loan system where if a country is applying to be part of a federation or a particular union, they can get some assistance in doing so and help kind of bring them out of
Well, I mean, that's the thing is,
cycle.
like, if it's the interesting thing is I think a lot of those loan development programs that a lot of wealthy countries have, there's always a back-end thing where they're trying to turn it into a strategic asset.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm loaning you a bunch of money. In the back of my mind, I'm also making you my best friend for 100 years because
Yeah.
you need me,
Yeah.
kind of thing. Like, with this kind of model, you might be able to get rid of that because the ultimate goal is to amalgamate everyone. You're sort of not trying to use people as strategic tools against anyone else.
And the stronger those amalgamations get, the more incentive countries will have to try to meet those human rights standards and those democracy standards to get in.
Yeah.
As they're slowly becoming smaller and smaller in comparison.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. Like, I think you'd have a lot of smaller countries and a lot of developing countries, poorer countries, where there'd be a massive incentive to do something and figure something out. And that's the thing is, if you're giving them loans on terms that are actually aiming to get them to the point where they can get in, rather than developing them on the terms of, I'm just trying to keep you as poor as possible for as long as possible, so you're my best friend, and I get all the free stuff in your country, kind of thing. Like, you're giving constructive loans rather than exploitative loan programs, and I think that would make a big difference with the speed at which things develop. And as well as you're basically saying an ideological message that, like, we want you to be a part of this.
Yeah.
Like, you're people, you're all human beings, you're capable of all the stuff that everyone else is capable of. We're just trying to get your country up to this standard so we can slot it into the greater thing. I think there's a massive difference in message, and there's a massive difference in intent.
Yeah.
So the thing is, I think you'd be able to have development unlike what we see at the moment. Because, like I said, what they're trying to do now is basically keep the countries as countries and just have all these loan programs out, so everyone has to be their like vassal almost forever. I wanted to mention this because obviously, I think it's pretty obvious that's the way you'd almost have to do it. Like, it would have to be some kind of gated development program of some kind.
It seems to work relatively well for the
It does, and the thing is, you can't, because the thing is, if you had one rich country and he suddenly said, yep, we're all one with 11 poor ones, the whole thing would just sort of come to pieces pretty quickly. Like, you need to even it out and actually do it in tiers and slowly so that nothing gets overly shocked in the process of doing it, even though doing this would be a continuous shock kind of thing. At least you're doing it in a way that's handleable, like manageable.
Yeah, and it's a way that actually makes things stronger and more stable after each shock.
Yeah, no, exactly. It would be really interesting to imagine, like, if you had 90% of the world in this thing, and then there's a few countries left or something. Like, what would that look like? I'm just trying to imagine,
I
like...
feel like that'd be a difficult
I'm kind of...
period to be in one of the...
I'm kind of
small
imagining,
ones.
like, all the world, but then there's still just America. It's like... No! No!
Where's the United States?
Although the irony is,
Do
at
you
that
reckon-
point, you'd have to make sure trade was even, because at that point, America would be so poor by comparison. The thing is, they would become China. So the thing is, they'd be the manufacturing center again,
Yeah,
but
right.
everyone would be getting paid $5 an hour or something.
Yeah.
Like, that's what that would be how they'd live. Like, if you think of it, that's how countries, like, when they're in the worst situation, they just lower all their standards, so then they become the manufacturing base.
Yeah.
That would be really weird to imagine. Just
Yeah.
imagining the map, just and then there's and then there's the US by
And
itself.
US.
Oh yeah, so I wanted to mention something because there's a guy I know who wrote this book about world parliaments called the UNPA campaign, and he runs this thing. It's basically a campaign to create a United Nations Parliamentary Assembly. So it's this thing that he's put a lot of effort into, and there's a few people that are a fair few people I think that are into it. But basically the idea is the UN is already an apparatus that's there. We need to empower it and give it a parliamentary assembly. So basically it has congressional powers,
Right.
so that it can actually come together and meet and create laws and things like that.
Actually do.
Yeah, no,
'Cause it's
exactly.
got that
Actually do
reputation
things.
of not being able to do anything.
The thing is, and I remember reading all about this, but my qualm with this, and I think it could definitely work. My concern about it, though, is the fact that it's basically a top-down approach.
Yeah.
So it's like, we've got these institutions, and if we just make the institution a complete one, then everyone will be part of it. But the thing is, without the consensus among regular people,
Yeah.
like, you're not starting from the bottom, you're kind of starting from the top. Without getting to people first, like getting people to understand it and agree to it, I mean, can you imagine suddenly if the UN just said, yep, we've just got this thing in place? Like, people are already paranoid about the UN. There's about 1 million conspiracy theories already. And like, without the consensus at the bottom, I feel like it would just justify concerns in a lot of people's
Yeah.
heads. And it would probably just pull itself apart as soon as it had come together. And that's what we're talking about legitimacy before.
Yeah.
You don't have legitimacy. And he was making this note in the book that the problem that communist states had was basically said, look, we are one party, we are dictatorial, we're everything else. That's, yep, fair enough. But we will guarantee you an excellent standard of growth and development in exchange. And that's sort of the bargain that people have in the Soviet and Chinese communist systems. And so the thing is, it's like, okay, that's the trade-off, fair enough. But then the second things go wrong,
Yeah.
the second things are bad, it's like, I'm suffering and you're not
promised
giving me
me.
anything.
Yeah.
So it's like the switch is just flicked immediately. So I feel like with this sort of system, like the second anything went wrong,
Yeah.
everyone would just be like, "Nah, flick," because you haven't won people over at all. You've just sort of imposed this thing over them and told them nothing. I don't know. I feel like the real win for this is going to be coming from the bottom
Yeah.
and basically having regular people want it enough, because like with the Trump thing, the thing is regular people coming out and wanting something, you've got this base, right? And then the thing is, stuff just occurs, like stuff just goes up from there because everyone gets passionate about it and figures it out or whatever. And the thing is, if you fuck something up, like they'll all be there to, say, yep, no, look, fair enough, but we're trying to get to here,
Yeah.
rather than there it is, all right, flick the switch kind of thing. Like, I think that's sort of the thing with the EU actually as well. I don't think they did enough work to win over regular people. And so when things start going haywire, obviously the British were just ready to blame the EU and
Yeah.
flick the switch again. Like, it's too much top end first and then hoping it'll transmit down. I think that's the future of something like this, is coming from the bottom, and is figuring out how to do that. The things I noted down. So this is the ideological question.
Yeah.
This is like, we were talking practical. This is ideological. We're talking about basically how you do it. So the two things I noted down were the Comintern, so the Communist International, and basically I just call it the missionary model, which is kind of like.
Alright, outline both of those.
I mean, the thing is, the missionary model is not really in detail. It's more just we know how missionaries worked, and it's like it's about getting regular people, because like they would just go all over the world and find regular people and say this is what this is, and obviously a lot of terrible things happened, and they taught them some questionable things. But the thing is, like. It's the act of going out and convincing people and convincing regular people. So you have these communities.
Yeah.
Because that's what they did. They'd set up like a church or something, and then the thing is all these regular people would end up being a part of that church over time. And then the thing is that formed a community, and then that was kind of the basis for that thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking, so the Comintern was basically a group of all the different communist countries, and what they do is basically fund smaller communist parties in other countries.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is, it's like there's a lot of funding, I think, coming from obviously Russia to the American Communist Party, the British Communist Party, Chinese Communist Party, like all that sort of stuff when it was all developing. So they were trying to prompt it, and they'd send people, they'd talk to them, they'd say this is the best way to do this or whatever. It's like it's a thing of like, this is how you spread this. And I think that kind of thing is probably, I think you need, because I'm trying to think about how to get this, because I think what you need is you need a community. You need to basically get regular people so they form a community, because then when you get a community in different places, that will form a political party eventually.
Yeah.
I
think maybe the strength of people's opinion and how much they care about it is going to be the big issue. Like, I think a lot of people, if you said, would you like this to happen? Would you like more unity within the world? People would say, yeah. Are you willing to fight for that? Nah.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
I think it's kind of backwards, but the question of ending the monarchy in Australia, of becoming completely independent from Britain, I think that's one of those things. Like, a lot of people will be we could do that, but they don't really care that much.
Yeah. I think that's the thing, is I think you need you need to have a vision at the end of what's going to change if you do it. Yeah. Like, I think with that, obviously, like, people have told me, we should become a republic and everything, but I'm like, yeah, I guess so. Like, that would probably be good, but like, it doesn't seem to inhibit anything
Nothing
we
really
do.
Would change, would it?
So I'm not that fussed. But like, I think that's the thing. The importance of this is to articulate the vision, is to basically show everyone and explain this is what it would look like. This is what you're going towards and what we're talking about. And I think if people had an idea of where it's going, a lot more at least. Not everyone. I think still a lot of people, you're right, wouldn't care. I think the vast majority wouldn't care that much. They'd vote for it, but they wouldn't do anything. Yeah. And so I think part of that is like, you're trying to get these, the part of the idea of trying to get these communities is basically you get people that all kind of agree, and I think a lot of them would just be in a community or whatever it is, like maybe it's an online community, maybe it's something physical that you can start to organize in certain places or whatever it is. A lot of them would be there just for the community itself.
Yeah.
Like, the vast majority would be there just to see their friends and people they know who think similarly or whatever it is. Like, again, this is a great example because I love bringing this up, but the Flat Earth Society, I think they have nailed this because their idea is insane, like absolutely insane. But like, have you watched the Netflix documentary about it?
No.
Oh, you have to. The documentary is essentially about the social phenomenon. It's not they talk about the stuff, but they're more talking about the people and like the mindset and the way these communities come together. It's like, they've created this hard community where a lot of them, 95% of them, will just watch other people's videos and stuff and be like, oh yeah, cool, and they know everyone and they want to be part of the community. And then 5% or something will actually make any content or post anything about it, right? And this is the same with most movements in the world, obviously. It's not special, it's more remarkable because it's insane.
Because it's
and
so
it's
crazy.
And so if that can do it, why can't this kind of thing? If that's gotten that far, this surely makes a lot more sense. So the point I'm trying to make is basically that you don't need everyone to be really into it. You just need a community. And I think the thing is, people would keep coming to something where all their friends are, even if they're not massively into it.
Yeah.
Like, the thing is, they're like, I agree with this, but I'm more here because all the people I like are here. And that is the basis of all communities. I bet you that's what all churches look like.
Yeah.
That's what all movements look like, all groups. And then the thing is, by having all those people together, the 5% that are willing to do something, maybe by having the community, you'd increase it to 10% or something. But the thing is,
them.
exactly, it energizes them. But then those 5% are all together and saying, "Oh, yeah, I'm going to do all this." And every time they do anything, they can tell the community, and then the community can tell other communities. And the 95% of people that are just there to watch and maybe tell their friends something or something like that grows and grows and grows.
Yeah.
And so I think it really needs to start as a community. It's just, I don't know the perfect method for starting them or what galvanizes that, but I guess that's the point of all the stuff that I'm doing. That I think it's about creating enough stuff that people can listen to it and talk to each other to at the very least, and start these communities. Because it has to start at the bottom, because you need it, because ideologically you can't do it from the top.
No.
Unless everyone was just completely zombified and it's like, this has happened. Yay. Which sounds horrible. So the other end of it is having these, the other note I wrote it down, is having toothless entities or half-complete entities. So the UN and the League of Nations are toothless entities. They are basically... So the League of Nations was the one they made after World War One to basically say, we won't fight World War One again, that was terrible, and they brought everyone together thinking it was going to be this really good organization, but really, it was just a talking chamber.
Yeah.
It's just a place for people to talk. It has a big name and fancy terms and stuff, but it's just a place for people to talk. The second anyone doesn't like what they're hearing or doesn't want to do whatever everyone's saying, they just revert straight back. Because they were countries just recently, they've all turned up thinking, oh, what's this all about? And then someone says, you should do this. And they're like, no.
Yeah.
And then they go back and don't do it. And that's the end of it. And then the UN, obviously, again, it's like, it's a place where you have a huge number of people talking. All these organizations will go there to fund themselves. Oh, yes, I put on a big talk at the UN and stuff. And it's like, but who the hell listened? You know what I mean? Like an organization like that, it's almost like it's a black hole. It's just like everyone goes and puts all this attention on it and all this stuff and all this importance on it, and then it all just sucks into the void. And it's like it makes them feel better. They get catharsis and then they leave, but it goes nowhere.
Yeah.
Like it just eats it. Like I actually think the UN causes more problems because all these people that want to do something positive think they're doing something positive by going to the UN. It's like they've got a special little playpen for all the kids who want to work really hard, and they've moved them all into there. Like, yep, go in there and get it all out of your system, and that way they can keep the rest of the world like doing whatever it's doing while they get all their expend all their energy trying to change things, and when they eventually realize it's a playpen.
Completely ineffective, and then that just harms the ideology of it. It's like, well, this is an example of it not working, therefore it can't work.
No, I actually remember when I was doing political science at uni, there was a ton of kids that were talking about going and working for the UN, and I was looking at it myself, but as you learnt more about it, you realised you didn't really want to, but the thing is, more and more people were thinking it was this big thing, and it's like the smartest kids ended up going and it's like, what did they end up doing?
Yeah.
I bet what they did was they probably got a lot of experience. They probably talked to a lot of people, saw a lot of things, and influenced exactly nothing. And that's the problem. And then they come out and they're really well educated and they've learnt a lot. But I feel like if all you do is just get frustrated, like you'd just be spending years and years in this place where a country can turn up and say, yeah, I want to do this. And they're like, we've been fighting against that and planning against that for 20 years. And like, so, okay, so you got like Duarte or something of the Philippines. And it's just, yeah, but I'm just going to shoot all the drug dealers. And they're just like, what? So then, and it's like, we've had a bajillion presentations about this. We've been talking about it for 30 years. That's a horrible thing to do. I'm just going to go back to my country and shoot all the drug dealers. And then he leaves and he goes and shoots all the drug dealers and everyone else in the way. And it's just at that point, surely you feel like, yes, that was 20 years well spent on like battling excessive crime prevention or something. And just, it's so... I want to have a proper thing about the UN because I want to get into it more. But the thing is, that is the perfect example of an entity. I reckon that it has a lot of good in that it's symbolic for a lot of people, but it's also... It just sucks so much attention and resources that goes nowhere. It's like, even... The Gulf War, the first Gulf War was basically... It's a UN war, so... when Saddam invaded Kuwait, because he thought he was allowed to. Apparently, he
Okay,
actually
that's
he met, I think it was with US or UK diplomats or something, and he made some like they made some comments or something, and he interpreted that as like, I think they're okay with me invading Kuwait, because he'd been fighting Iran for ages,
Yeah.
and so he was their best friend because
Right.
they were Islamic Iran, and that war was like, yes, this is really good, keep doing that. And then he invaded Kuwait, and Kuwait said, help us, kind of thing, and then basically the UN said, yep, we're going to have a war, we're going to stop this and kick them out. And then by the UN was going to have a war, it was 99% Americans with UN helmets.
Right.
So really the countries were just doing what the countries wanted to do still. It really, like, they were still just doing whatever. Like, the UN was the face, but it's just the face whenever they want it to be the face. It functionally, every war the UN ever fights, someone is heading it up. So NATO and the US was the one in the Balkans.
Yeah.
So again, it was mostly the US.
So do you think the US would have done that regardless?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the thing is, they basically all they did in the Balkans was bomb things, because it's like that's their version of, we don't like what's happening, but we don't hate it enough to send people in.
Yeah.
So we're just gonna bomb the crap out of everything, which is the one where they bombed the Chinese embassy by accident. When they were bombing Sarajevo or something, or Belgrade? No, Sarajevo, I think it was. Yeah, apparently a bomb just landed bang on the Chinese embassy from an American bomber,
Wow.
and they accidentally did that one. I don't know. Like, but that's the thing. Like, it's all national games. It's a UN face, but it's all just national games. Like, it's just the same things they would have done anyway. So that's toothless entities. I'm going to that another time. The EU, obviously, we've already talked about, is a half-complete entity, and the thing is, again, it can cause more problems than it fixes in some ways, because it just, people see it as this ineffective bureaucracy, almost like it's been intentionally created to be confusing.
I think it's got a much better reputation in the UN.
Oh yeah,
I'd
absolutely.
say that's not
The
necessarily-
UN has the UN has the advantage of being nothing. So
Yeah.
the thing is, like, no one likes or hates it. It just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Yes. And so the EU actually influences things. So, like, people, like, I think people have stronger feelings either way.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. But yeah, like, having an incomplete thing, it completely undercuts, like, your ability to create what you're trying to create. Because then people see it and they're like, this is terrible. Did you intentionally create this to be bureaucratic so we don't understand what's happening? Is this a new sort of world order sort of thing? Like, you just freak people out.
Yeah.
You basically, you need to somehow have the UN, have the EU model, but have it be a complete country.
Yeah.
It would need to be a federal entity that is bringing more states in, rather than half complete and just pulling countries into a membership. Because, like, I think you would just have much larger scale problems. So I just made the note here. I think we've probably gone for a while anyway, but the thing is, I've made the note here about whatever we do. The thing is, whatever we think this is what we're going to do, it's going to be different. Like, it's not going to happen that way. Like, it's going to be subtly different, massively different, whatever. But the thing is, it's more just about acknowledging that and going for popular support.
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth thinking about
Yeah.
how it's going to happen. That's,
Oh, no. Yeah, no,
even
of
if it
course.
doesn't turn out exactly that way.
Yeah,
You can't do it
absolutely.
otherwise.
Because the thing is, like, I think it's great to think about, but I think the main thing we want to try and do is get support, and maybe part of support is planning it out really well, obviously. But the thing is, when you get people understanding what you're trying to do, and they understanding what you're trying to get to, you have a lot more forgiveness when things inevitably get more complicated and difficult than you're expecting them to.
Yeah.
Because without that, again, the second things go wrong, everyone will be like, there it is. I knew it. I knew it was going to fuck up. There it is. Let's stop. And, like, that's how people are like. If you haven't convinced them, and because I think, because I'm in sales, and the thing is, if you haven't convinced them on, like, a really deep level that this makes sense, if you've, like, just, it was one little thing, you've kind of got them interested, the second something goes wrong, they'll be like, nah, don't worry
Yeah.
about it, just cancel it. And it just falls apart in an instant. You really need to have that, because then when things go wrong, it's a completely different conversation for me professionally. it's little things go wrong. There's hiccups. There's compliance issues that come up where they're getting set up, whatever it is, and they'll understand.
Yeah.
They'll be like, oh, look, that's annoying, but yeah, here you go. Here's the thing. Here's that bit of paperwork. Yep, no, that's fine. And it's a completely different conversation. Whereas if you've barely got them, and the second that happens, now don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Just, it's gone. And it's the same thing for this. Like, it's basically stuff will go wrong, so we need to get people rather than coming from the top. Because I don't think and this is the last point I had, is I don't think functionally it's that complicated. Like, I don't think, if you're talking in terms of, like, functionally getting it to work practically, like, once people have agreed, getting it to happen is not that complicated. I think you just need a gigantic team of people to spend, like, 10 years on it or something to really get it out properly. Like, it's complicated, but it's not unfeasible.
Yeah.
It's more just people don't think about it or want it or
Yeah.
or aren't aiming for it. So the practical stuff will be fixed later, I think. I think the thing is practically getting it to come together in a way that's sustainable is easily doable. It's just we need to get normal people to want to. And I think that's the most important battle we're fighting.
Definitely.
Alright. I guess that's it then. So the important thing is people. And you are the people. So you're important. You're breathtaking. Have you seen all those memes?
No.
Oh, the Keanu Reeves memes. I'll show it to you.
Oh,
Anyway, it's all good. See you later. This is Daniel.
I've been Carla.
And I've been Shannon.
See you guys.